Hello guys, and welcome to our first video. This video will be focusing on introducing you to functions. Before we get into the definition of a function, why don't we try establishing a general intuition behind what a function is. So a function is like a machine that takes in an input and produces an output. Alright, so we put an input into this machine. The machine does something with that input and produces an output. And that machine is a function. Why don't we start off by creating our own function? We'll create a function that takes in a shape and produces a number of sides. So for example, if we put a triangle into this function, the function would produce 3. In this case, our input is the triangle and the output is 3. If we put a square into the function, it produced 4. Now obviously in math we like to work with functions that deal with numbers. So why don't we do 2 more examples? For this next example, we'll create a function that adds 2 to the input. For example, if we used 3 as the input, then 3 would go into the function would add 2 and produce 5. So 3 is the input and 5 is the output. If we put 8 into the function would add 2 and produce 10. So that's good. We see that for an input of 3, add 2 to get 5. For an input of 8, add 2 to get 10. We'll create another function over here that triples the input. For example, if we put 3 into the function would multiply the input by 3 and produce 9. If we put an input of 8, the function would multiply the input by 3 and produce 24. So that's good. Alright, so we've established the general idea of what a function is. The other thing is, in math we like to use certain kinds of notation. So the first thing is, if we want to create a function and give it to someone to tell them we've created this function, this is what it does, we don't want to have to write input and output the whole time. It'd be a lot more convenient to have to just write like a few letters. So in this case, for the input, we normally write the input as x. And the output, we normally write the output as y. In that case, we would write that x, the input, goes into the function, and the function produces y. Going back to the function that adds 2. Okay, so the other thing is we don't want to have to write an entire line saying x goes into the function produces y. It'd be nice if we could write this as a short mathematical statement. So the way we're going to do this is start off by writing y is equal to x, and then asking ourselves, what is the function doing to the input? What is the function doing to x? So for the function that adds 2, we add 2 to x, and that produces the output. In that case, we'd have that the output y is equal to x plus 2. And we can do this again with inputs of 3 and 8. So for an input of 3, that means that x is equal to 3, because x is the input. That would give us y is 3 plus 2, which is 5. In that case, x is equal to 3. If x is equal to 3, we get y is equal to 5. For an input of 3, we get an output of 5 because we're adding 2. Simple as that. Same thing for 8. If we have an input of 8, that means x is equal to 8. We can put that into the function, get y is equal to 8 plus 2, and that gives us 10. So for an input of 8, for x is equal to 8, we get an output of 10. Y is equal to 10. So we can do this again for a function that triples. Once again, we say, okay, we write down y is equal to x and ask ourselves, what are we doing to the input? What are we doing to x? Well, we're multiplying by 3. So that means we'll have y is equal to 3 times x. So for an input of 4, x is equal to 4, we have y is 3 times 4, which is 12. And in case you're not familiar with the dot just means multiplication. So in math, we like to use the variable x a lot. And when we use that, as well as x to represent multiplication, things can get kind of confusing and messy, so we'd much rather prefer to just use a simple dot to show multiplication. So that's what we're doing over here. Anyways, back to this. So for an input of 4, x is equal to 4, we get an output of 12, y is equal to 12. We're just multiplying by 3. 4 times 3 is 12. Same thing for an input of 5. That would mean x is equal to 5. We'd have y is equal to 3 times 5 is 15. And that would mean that for an input of 5, or x is equal to 5, we get an output of 15, or y is equal to 15. Okay, so that's all I have to say for this video. In the next video, we'll be going over some certain characteristics and properties of functions that are very useful to know. But for now, thanks for watching and hope to see you again soon.